The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
So, I'm Marc-Anthony. Thanks so much for being here. This is the first time I've presented on this forthcoming book, so this will be really exciting. Like I said, I just had time starting a year ago to start promoting my first book, and even my first book is 10 years ahead of anything Silicon Valley has thought of and anything the big box stores are teaching. They're still teaching people 1991 methods. They're still teaching people that viruses exist. They're still out there looking for viruses. It's kind of like if you went to your doctor and your doctor said, hey, so do you have the bubonic plague or polio? No. Well, then you must be all right, because that's the only things I know to look for. Really? There are so many threats, and last time, a few days ago, we talked about the core concepts of my first book, which are the 4 new threats. So really quickly, in review, there are 4 new threats out there. Most computer guys think that viruses are a problem. Those are not a problem anymore. They haven't happened since 2013. In fact, antivirus products can do an excellent job of slowing your computer down by 90%, making you think you need a new one, wasting $75 a year, and giving you lots of hassle. They can never actually protect against these new threats. So what are the new threats? Really quick, the first new threat is legalized spyware. There are many forms of it. I can attach a toolbar to your web browser that records your behavior legally. I can attach a piece of spyware to your printer driver if I'm a printer manufacturer. The manufacturers themselves attach spyware to their printer software. Slows you down massively, records everything you do legally. They get away with it legally because instead of using the word virus or spyware, they call it telemetry. Computer manufacturers get away with arbitrarily slowing your computer down. They doom it at the factory before they send it to you, before they put the tape on the box. Again, they don't call it viruses, they call it bloatware, so they get away with it legally. Bloatware slows your computer down massively, artificially, so you think you need a new one every few years. It can never do anything for you. It does an excellent job of slowing you down, nagging you, monitoring you, wasting your time. There's also fake cleaners. Again, it's not a virus because they don't use the word virus. They use the word cleaner or optimizer. It pops up and does a smoke and mirrors scan and tells you it's cleaning cookies and junk files and then begs you for $39.99 a month. That's malicious. That's deceptive. But they didn't use the word virus, so they got away with it. And again, most computer guys can't find it because they're looking for things that don't happen anymore. It's kind of like if I showed up with laser guns and your security guard was only trained on caveman clubs and bows and arrows, right? They're trained on looking for ancient threats. There are so many forms of these new legalized threats. There's also notification attacks where it's a little banner that stabs the side of your screen and says, you need diet pills, you need McAfee, whatever. That's fully legalized. It's in your web browser. Again, you can't find it through a traditional scan. You just have to go to your web browser and go to notifications and rip them out yourself. So I and my apprentices know to look for these things. We know where they are, we know what they are, we know how to rip them out ourselves using our own good human sense. The other new threats, update attacks. We talked a lot about that last time. These are, the updates claim that they're going to protect you, right? We're going to protect you against some guy in some basement on a Wednesday and he's hopping on one foot doing the hokey pokey in a high tide and a new moon who might be able to get into your computer. It's an astronomically unlikely threat. So updates claim to help you, but then they end up causing more trouble and, oh, look at that, slowing you down more, and oh, look, spying on you in new ways. So updates are actually a threat. And once I turn off updates, when I protect a product from updates, it remains stable from then on. That's really all I do when I go to someone's house. I rip out the antivirus product and I put a stop to the updates. And that machine remains stable for 15 years, 10 years, whatever it might be. There is no need to buy a new computer every 3-4 years. The vast majority of expenditures in my industry are totally unnecessary. And later on, we're going to talk about the forced obsolescence and the treadmill scandal, where the industry is so drunk on this recurring revenue that they keep coming out with new ways to artificially damage people's computers or deceive them into thinking they need new ones. Hey, I want a Dodge Viper, but am I going to break someone's computer and tell them they need a new one just to achieve that? The next new threat is support scams. And well, there's ransomware and then support scams. Either way, they're in no particular order. So support scams are when a bad guy calls you up and says, hi, I'm Microsoft, I'm Amazon, I'm eBay, I'm PayPal, I'm the IRS, whatever, and you have viruses, and you have cookies and Trojans and hacks. And then he reads a sheet of paper with scary sentences on there that we've been trained to fear. Either you get a huge pop-up with sirens and warnings, or the guy calls you out of the blue, or you type in tech support and you stumble on his fake phone number, or he sends you a fake invoice from McAfee or PayPal or whatever, right? So there's plenty of ways he can get to you. You get him on the phone, he says a list of scary words on a sheet of paper, and then he asks to break into your computer. That really is an admittance that he can't get in unless he talks to you. Nobody can ever break into your computer, ever, unless you let them. So all you have to do is hang up the phone and he can't get to you. No one can ever get into your computer unless you let him in using a fully legalized remote support tool. So the only thing that can stop this is not me, it's not Norton, it's not the government, it's you warning your friends. All right, and the last one is ransomware. Ransomware is if your organization is infected with Microsoft Outlook, then it is ripe for the taking. Ransomware can walk right in at any time. It walks in and it scrambles all your documents and photos, leaving them unreadable. And they say you aren't allowed to read those anymore unless you give us some huge amount of money for ransom. A lot of organizations end up paying for them. 76% of organizations end up paying the ransom, which implies that 76% of IT professionals cannot protect their employers, which is very sad because I know how to prevent them. It's very easy. We have this thing, you and I, it's called common sense. So if you simply do a real proper backup, if you duplicate your documents and photos onto a external hard drive, right? Don't move them onto one, but duplicate them, and then take it and disconnect it. When you physically disconnect something and put it in a fire safe, a bad guy from the internet can't touch it. Imagine that. That's really sad that 76% of IT professionals do not know that concept, and now you do.
They don't back up their system?
They don't understand how to do a backup. It's insane. If they did, then none of this would be a problem. Is that not insane? Yeah. Another bonus threat is the fake Wi-Fi scandal, where you have a powerful internet connection coming into your house, a powerful broadband connection, but how come you have Wi-Fi problems all the time? Your Zooms are glitchy and your Netflixes are buffering and crashing and all that? Huh, interesting. You remember when Dennis the Menace used to crimp the hose when Mr. Wilson was trying to take a drink? That's what's happening there. Your internet provider gives you a phenomenal internet connection coming to your house, but then they rent you a garbage router, which I call a fake router. Technically, it's a real piece of plastic you can hold, but it's utter garbage and never works and causes all the problems in the world. All the hunger and war and famine in the world are caused by them. It's all of the problems with your Wi-Fi are caused by fake routers. So a huge portion of my income is driving around to people's homes. Hey, Mark, I have Wi-Fi problems. You must have a fake router. Wow, how'd you know? You must be renting the router that the cable company provided to you. Wow, how'd you know? They told me it was good. Wow, it's advanced Wi-Fi, our safest, most secure, most advanced Wi-Fi yet. And actually every year it gets worse. Spectrum has the evil egg and Comcast has the Atawa and whatever. and they'll take a phenomenal internet connection and they'll cut the signal by 90%. And hey, look, I can't use my Wi-Fi more than 11 feet away. Huh. So all you do there is rip out the fake router, hand it back to them. You end up saving 10 bucks a month. And then you buy a real router. My favorite is TP-Link, and you plug it in, and you just don't have problems anymore. That's what's going on with my industry. A lot of dudes out there either mean well or they think that they have to make money through recurring revenue, through milking people for eternal fees, right? I worked at a large corporation doing corporate tech support for a year, and I hated it, but I made friends and made some money and paid off some bills, and I learned a lot. One day I approached my supervisor and I said, hey, you know, I could send out a memo that would prevent 90% of the calls we get. And he goes, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and not do that, like Bill Lumberg. And I said, why? And he said, because we make money per call. They make money on your suffering. I had breakfast with a guy once and I said, hey, can I send some of my overflow work to you? He was another computer tech, and he goes, Mark, I like Microsoft because they're my bread and butter. Because when people have a problem, I make money. And I said, do the cops enjoy when people shoot each other because that's how they make money? Hello, I make money through actually putting a stop to people's problems. And then it backfired and people ended up telling all their friends about me. So I charge people a lot on day one, and they don't need me for 10 years or whatever. I had a couple a few weeks ago, and they said, Mark, we haven't talked to you since 2018. We haven't needed you. Great. So that's that story. And a lot of what I talk about now is the continuation of this, right? If these dudes are so drunk on your pain and the recurring revenue that comes from it, or drunk on the recurring revenue where they make you think you need a product, right? We talked about the software rental scandal, where Microsoft said, hey, you know that thing that you used to pay 150 bucks and it was yours? How about we rent it to you for 70 bucks a year for the rest of your life times everyone in the world? Ha! And nobody's questioning it. No one's questioning it. People go along with it, again, because these companies get away with this stuff under cover of complexity. Right? It's a shell game. If I put a penny under a shell and I keep flipping it around and flipping it around, you can't figure out what it is, right? All of you are normal, intelligent, successful people, and they get away with it. They pull the wool over your eyes by making things sound more complex than they actually are. So my books explain everything in plain English. So imagine if you take a rope, right? You go down to the docks over here and you take a rope and you spin it. And you spin it, and you spin it, and you spin it. You know when you're a kid and you just sit there and you take a yarn and you spin it? And what happens eventually? It turns into a knot, and then it curls up on itself, right? That's what's happening with the exponential complexity of my industry. It curls in on itself. We now have things that I call anti-improvements and anti-features. Well, we have to keep changing things to justify our paycheck, so let's change them at random. Let's roll a dice and make everything worse with each update, just to make sure people are still subscribing. And people don't question it. They just go for it because they think that's the way of the world and they don't know about alternatives. As I said last time, if you are infected with Microsoft Office and you're sick of paying eternally, there is something called LibreOffice, right? If you're one of the 7 or 8 people on Wall Street who needs Microsoft Office for some advanced thing, then great. But everybody else in the world doesn't need that. You can use LibreOffice. It's totally free. All you have to do is make sure when you save a document that it saves it as DocX or XLSX. But it's totally free and does everything any normal person needs. I've been using it since 2002 and haven't noticed a difference. It's simple, it's stable, it's safer. So there's really no need for Microsoft or big tech anymore. And you'll see this in the book. And by the way, if you want to email me, I'm happy to email you a rough draft of this forthcoming book. You can pass it to your friends with a wink and a nod and tell them it was a leaked copy. So I'm going to read a couple sections to you, right? Again, this is the first time I have shown this to the public, really, aside from aside from emailing it to a few people. Let's start here with the chaos industry. My buddy Dom says, greed and stupidity together are like gasoline and a lighter. That's what my industry is. It's little more than greed and stupidity and overzeal. There's two types of people in the world, those with morals, logic, ethics, and common sense over here. That's you. And then there's the IT industry, which exhibits very little of that. Tech was getting more user-friendly up until around 2010, maybe 2012, when Windows 8 was unleashed on humanity. And then things started getting worse. Products were becoming more complicated, and many of them are now controlled by the factory. Last time we talked about the Sonos scandal. It's a product, and they sell it to you, and you think you own it, but a lot of these cloud-controlled products, when you turn them on, call home to the factory to beg for permission to function. And at some point, when that factory deems you unworthy, or deems the product out of support, or goes belly up itself, that product becomes a doorstop or a paperweight. No one knows what's going on. Shame on anyone in these organizations who claims to be an environmentalist. It's anti-consumer culture. It's all cynicism and condescension. Did you observe that in your time there?
I was before they got really bad. I was in the basic machines.
Okay.
Zeros.
It was fun
When the
back
first
then.
operating system came in, I said, what is this mess? I mean, it's a huge amount of memory.
Right.
They knew exactly what we were doing with nothing.
I love that. It's an early example of that. And since then, it's only gotten more.
The machine that is still working in the FAA system.
Yeah, that's a great point. Is two things there. They made do with what they had, right? If you had a limitation of 15K of RAM or 256K of RAM or whatever it was, you made do. But now that they're encouraging people to buy a new computer every year, right? All of a sudden, we can get greedy. And we don't have to have respect for any limitations. So their imaginations run wild, and they make more and more and more and more and more stuff. And as I always say, it's like a Jenga tower. You keep building that taller and taller and taller, and it falls apart. It becomes less stable. And you're absolutely right. The older machines are much more stable. When people say, oh, I was told to get the latest and greatest. No, older is always safer, more stable, more user-friendly. And in a lot of cases, older machines are the only way you can get away with having something that's yours, as opposed to this rental garbage. There's a lot of cases where I work with a lot of small businesses, and well, we can't find the new version of this. We were told that we needed the new version, and that means we have to get involved in a rental. So I help people, again, go toward the older and go toward the safer and look for alternatives. And at the very end, we're going to talk about Mint, which is an incredible alternative. It's commonplace for these companies to take a lot of liberties with you. They believe that they own you and they control you and they can do whatever they want, but they don't even have control over themselves, right? So they come up with these whacked out ideas. And one time Microsoft decided on a whim to just give out your Wi-Fi password to your friends. No one said a word, because do you have time to read tech news? No. No one says a word. No one does anything about this. Later on, I'll talk about how I'm not a huge fan of slapping more laws onto them, because it usually makes it worse, but people need class action over here, because Microsoft and Apple and HP and all of them need to be shamed a little bit. So, computers are no longer a hobby. We depend on them. It's no longer a hobby or a joke or a game. We depend on them for our finances and for everything else. And if people had any idea just how hollow and rotten the technology was underneath this stuff. The recurring themes I have found in the industry: greed and milking for fees, complexity, chaos, unreliability, obfuscation, condescension, hegemony, injustice, shell games, and no recourse for the consumer, right? You're stuck. If you have a problem with Microsoft Office or Google Worksheets or Workspace, whatever they're calling it this week, where are you going to go? You can't call them, right? Scammers will pick up the phone, but big tech will not pick up the phone, because too bad for you, we worship automation. And you have to deal with it. Another huge concept, actually, come to think of it, that goes along with this is vendor lock-in. So in Silicon Valley, companies start out with the idea, with the goal of being a monopoly. They hate competition, and every startup starts with the goal of being a monopoly in its own little sub-industry, right? They're like the trolls under the bridge. Ooh, I gotta write that down, actually. That's good.
It was good.
Yeah, yeah. And where's my mouse? There it is. Yeah. So even if they're not a monopoly like an Apple or a Google or a Microsoft, they can be a monopoly in their particular sub-industry, right? eBay is a monopoly and in their little corner, right? And there are so many examples of these, right? Where it's just QuickBooks is a brutal monopoly, right? So in all these cases, I show people, hey, look, there are lesser known alternatives, right? There's an alternative to eBay called Mercari, and it's a lot simpler and more enjoyable like eBay used to be. There's alternative to QuickBooks such as, let's see here, there's manager.io and there's Patriot Software and there's a lot of things like that. So there's just so much to talk about. I don't even know where to begin. Yeah, like I said, it's not under cover of darkness, but rather of complexity. Let's talk about passwords for a second. This is a great example of the industry thinking that they need to slather complexity onto something in order to solve it. But in reality, it just makes it worse. When you sign up for a bank website or you try to log in, what do they say? You need 10 characters and letters and numbers and music notes and all sorts of things, right? And that's going to somehow protect you. If you're in a high school class in a computer lab and your friends are sitting next to you giggling and trying to guess your password, sure, then it makes sense to put some special characters in there and some ampersands and hashtags and whatever else. But other than that, it's totally pointless, okay? And let's go to that section, shall we? This is in the Dispelling Myths section. A complex password is an excellent way to hassle you, the user, and guarantees you won't be able to remember it, right? But other than that, it doesn't help at all. It was all formed, the rules were formed under the myth, the misconception that bad guys are sitting around guessing your password, like your high school friends, right? In reality, bad guys will remote into your computer, such as during a support scam, right? Hi, I'm AOL, and you have viruses, and I have to get into your computer. What do you think they do when they get into your computer? They go right into the browser, and they conveniently help themselves to that list of saved passwords. That's another anti-feature, right? Your browser thought it was helping you, it complicated your life, and it saved all your passwords so a bad guy could just reach in and grab them. They'll break into an organization's server, okay? Do you remember when, I think it was the Nicolas Cage movie where he broke into a car dealer and took the box on the back wall that had all the keys in it? Why, he wasn't gonna go out and break into each car when he can just go grab that whole box, right? That's all it was. Same thing here. Why would a bad guy break into your computer at your desk when he can just break into a company that's afflicted with Microsoft technology, so hot knife through butter, get in there and grab the sheet with everyone's password? Companies do not want to admit this, so they'll mail out a letter that says, we were part of a data breach, or just, you need to change your password because you do. They don't want to admit that they were infected with Microsoft technology and they let your stuff go. A lot of websites still recommend all the crazy long passwords because they don't understand bad guys can do a thing called copy and paste. You ever do copy and paste in word processing? It's my favorite tool. That's all they do. They don't care if you have letters and numbers and music notes and you spell things with an @ symbol or whatever. They'll just copy and paste. So computer guys don't understand that. The bearded tyrants who run these IT departments at these banks don't understand basic logic. So because of that, we all have to suffer at their requirements. So even if they do come up with a program that automatically tries to formulate passwords or guess what your password is, you're locked out after 3 attempts anyways, which usually serves to thwart us. So none of this can ever help us. 10 years ago, I was a guy driving around fixing people's broken machines. And it was easy. I was the guy, I could fix anything, and that was it. But now, again, with these worldwide issues, we're all suffering, and I have to come out with books and give talks to affect this entire industry because we are all suffering at the hands of paranoid people. All right, what else are we going to talk about? Who wants to talk about 5G? So, huge misconceptions here with 5G. When you are at home and maybe you connect to a Wi-Fi and it'll have like regular one and then it'll be a 5G one. Is that 5G? Nope, not at all. It's actually 5 gigahertz, but the guys who make routers are too lazy to type 5 gigahertz, so they've confused an entire planet. When you are home, you have 2 different kinds of Wi-Fi. You have regular, which is 2.4 gigahertz, and the other one is 5 gigahertz. That's it. Has nothing to do with 5G, has nothing to do with cell phones, nothing else. And yeah, I mean, if you really want to, you can unplug your router at night or something like that, but it's such a weak signal compared to the cell towers out there that it's not that bad. So totally separate concept. It's 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi. The 5G that everyone's worried about and should be worried about is 5th generation cell phone technology, 5th generation cell towers. And with the 5th generation, there's what they call a spectrum of different frequencies that they're allowed to use. They now have one, and I forget the frequency. I think it's like 900 or something. Let's take a look here. Here it is. And the high band is a short distance. So there's low band, which is the long distance we've been using, and then there's high band, which is or they call it 5G UC. I think it's like 5G. Oh, of course, I can't think of the what it means, but anyway, 5G ultra capacity, and it's a short range. But turns out that's the frequency that cooks people. That's the frequency that microwaves use. So mainly Verizon uses it, not surprised. But non-Verizon sticks with the safer ones, not surprised. All right. And finally, you might see these little cages where you can take your router and put it in a cage. Again, your router's not the problem. And if you do that, then your router won't work, right? That's like taking your speakers and putting them in the closet and closing the door. It doesn't work. Why do that? Again, if you really want to, you unplug it, fine. So at this point, this part of the book is about tech tips and dispelling myths and that sort of thing. Another one here, does anyone want to talk about VPN and scary public Wi-Fi? And then we'll talk about photo sticks. How's that? So I was told that public Wi-Fi was scary. So there are a lot of filthy tech companies out there that are scaring you into thinking that you should be scared when you go to a cafe and try to use the Wi-Fi there. They are hoping that you don't understand that your stuff is already protected by something called HTTPS, okay? And as I might have said last time, do you think your bank is gonna let you out there into the world doing banking totally in the clear, right? Where anyone can see what's going on? No. They're insured to the gills, and they're zipped up to the gills, right? So VPN, in and of itself, is an okay technology. The idea is if you work for a big corporation and you want to work from home that day, then your computer dials into the work computer, the server at work, and it is cloaked with something called a VPN tunnel. In that case, it makes sense that you have to cloak your traffic, right? It cloaks it so that people can't see what you're doing with regard to your office computer, right? What you're doing for work. And if you live in a foreign country and you want to watch TV from here, want to watch Netflix from here, okay, fine. You do a VPN, and then the VPN tunnel emerges in a spot somewhere in America, and then Netflix thinks you're in America. Okay, great, right? So it's like a gopher tunnel or something. That's fine. But again, these companies make you think that you need it to protect yourself from hackers and viruses. Google laughs in the face of VPN, right? You could have 50 VPNs on there, but Google still records everything you do with the Google history scandal, okay? And bad guys, again, bad guys are using fully legalized means to spy on you. I should say other bad guys. So Google and other bad guys are using fully legalized means to spy on you that go right through the VPN. The VPN just cloaks whatever. And it all goes right through.
So you're saying you don't need a VPN unless you're coming in from Europe or someplace?
Yeah, if you're, and only if,
It's
yeah.
coming from Europe.
And that's fine if he needs it, absolutely. But the vast majority of people are told that they need it because it's an excellent way to pilfer $7 a month from somebody.
Okay.
That's what a lot of this stuff is. The iCloud scandal is all about pilfering $1 a month. How many people in the world? I think it's either 1.3 or 3 billion people in the world are using iPhones, and a lot of them are paying $1 a month, not because they actually know what they're paying for. It's just to swat away that notification so that it stops bothering them. So that's a lot of dollars every month for Apple. Let's talk about the photo stick scandal, because that's another incredibly important one. I had a lady just a couple weeks ago who was hit by the photo stick scandal. And she called up and said, "Hey Mark, I just lost my husband and we had all of our pictures of our whole life on a photo stick." And I said, "Great, let me guess, it broke." And she said, "Yeah, how'd you know?" Said, "My daughter was trying to compile photos for the services and plugged it in and unplugged it or whatever, and it failed to work, and that's all of our photos in our life." And I said, "Yeah, okay." So a couple things. Number one, as I talked about all the time with proper backup, right? You duplicate your stuff, because all of this stuff is garbage that can die at any time. Duplicate your stuff. Keep it in at least 2 places at once. I have my stuff in 3 backup hard drives that I keep scattered across my city. The next thing is the photo stick scandal specifically is this. People see it on some TV sale, or they see it advertised online, and it promises the world, right? Plug this into your computer and it'll gather all your photos together, and it'll take all your photos from the cloud, which is a scam. That's impossible, right? It's extremely difficult to go into a cloud service and pull your photos back. That's one thing I do for people as a service, and it's extremely difficult. It's a very needed service because the cloud photos are a one-way street, right? So this thing promises the world. In reality, it takes about, it's like a 10-cent thumb drive. It's the worst quality, cheapest thumb drive you can possibly buy, and it dies if you look at it the wrong way. And so people are trusting it with all their stuff, right? And that's the other crazy thing about big box stores, right? People, I'll say, "Hey, look, all right, so you just got a new computer from big box store. All right, great." And they moved all your data over, right? Well, they probably get half of it at most. And they plop all your data somewhere, and then they throw the old computer away. They don't even keep the old hard drive. Hello, take out the hard drive, put it on a shelf, and that's your backup. Hello. So anyway, the photo stick is 80 or 150 bucks. It's the cheapest, most unreliable thumb drive you can buy. It's horribly slow as well. I've used them. And they take advantage of the fact that people's digital lives are a mess, and they promise to simplify things, okay? That's your story there. If you truly want a thumb drive that actually works, just buy anything that's not a photo stick and anything that's not SanDisk. Just avoid those brands. And anything that's not Western Digital. SanDisk and Western Digital have no ethics. So buy anything but those, and you'll get something reliable. You duplicate your stuff yourself, doing a drag and drop copy. Make sure, human verifiable, right? My method is human verifiable. Make sure that it exists on the thumb drive, and then put it in a safe place. That's it. Let's talk about the spinning circle.
Of death.
So there's a lot of them actually. Yeah, so Apple, with an Apple computer, we call them a beach ball of death, because it's the spinning colored ball, and it usually spells doom for the computer. In that case, it usually means Apple has attacked your product in order to destroy it so that you go buy another one. Apple used to be awesome, and in 2018 they fell to pieces. I actually have a section called Lemmings, where it talks about how Apple used to be innovative, their hardware and software were superior, consistent, reliable, safe. And then in 2019, they had a meeting and they apparently said, hey, let's just lose all our ethics. So they just lost all their ethics. But starting around 2013, there's a concept called deprecation. We're just going to do away with this, and too bad for you. So in 2013, they decided to, let's step back. In 1999, they deprecated the floppy drive, right? Those colored Apple iMacs deprecated the floppy drive, and they went with all USB ports. And okay, that was cool. That made sense, right? Floppies never worked right to begin with. But around 2013, things got weird, right? Just after Steve Jobs died, all of a sudden, the babies are running the house, and they decided to deprecate CD and DVD drives from laptops. Hey, wait, I was using that. And now everyone in the world can't use a CD or DVD on their laptop because Apple did away with it, and the rest of the industry followed them off a cliff like lemmings. So many examples of that that we will, let's actually do that now. Let's see here. There it is. Trying to find some more examples of that. They got rid of the DVD drives. Oh yeah, removable batteries. That would make too much sense, wouldn't it? So we got to keep the batteries sealed in there to make you think you need a new $1,000 phone. Whenever your battery goes bad, please bring it to a third-party guy who can undo all the glue, which is insane. I don't even know how to do that. It's insane. Make sure this way you give less money to Apple. You don't even have to pay Apple for the repair or replacing. You pay some deserving guy to take the machine apart and protect you from Apple. So many examples. Laptop keyboards, right? Let me show you my laptop keyboard. Laptop keyboards are probably the most damaged part of a laptop, right? The most frequently damaged. You spill some coffee on it or whatever. In the old days, it was the first part that you'd pull off, right? There were little tabs here and you pull it up. And maybe a screw on the bottom to hold it in. You pop it off, it's $15, you're done. We can't have that now, can we? So starting around 2013 or so, Apple said, hey, let's make our keyboards the last item that you can remove. So you have to take apart the whole shebang to get to it, because evil. Nobody has any reason for it or explanation. So again, the industry said, wow, that is an evil idea. We should do it too. And then they did it. And now anytime you have a tiny problem, you just, sorry, too bad, take apart the whole thing, which makes it more expensive to repair and makes you more likely to think about buying another one. All of this, again, things used to be getting better. And then when someone realized that there really are no more innovations, well, we got to keep the money flowing. I had a guy about a year ago, one of my favorite clients, and a lot of my intelligent people, right, they're used to Apple. This guy's really brilliant, and he's used Apple since '84. And I hate to break it to these people. Hey, look, in 2019, they fell to pieces and they dropped all their ethics. So another thing that Apple did to fall off a cliff is, aside from getting rid of all the ports on their laptops in 2015, yeah, you're not allowed to have USB ports or any other ports on there because, sorry, too bad for you. I could see gradually going to newer style. They got rid of the real USB and went to stupid USB. That's my official name for that, for the little ones. But anyway, Apple said, wait a minute, all right. And I've used this analogy before with other things, but let's say I sold you a car and I glued the tires to the car permanently. So after a year or two, can't do anything about it, you put the whole thing in the garbage and come back to me. So they've done that with other things, but in this case, Apple did that with hard drives. The most crucial part of your computer, they decided to glue permanently into the motherboard. No one's going to realize this until a few years from now when these Apples start breaking. So if you have a problem, I could see screwing people over for money and making them buy a whole new computer and charging them a ton of money and sealing the battery and whatever, but your hard drive, that's your precious data. All right, 99 billion zillion % of people don't have backup. Everyone calls me up and says, hey Mark, I decided to call you after a disaster. Can you help? My computer broke. And I say, sure, and I go over there. In most cases, up until that moment, I go to their house, I move the little door off, I open the door, I open the bottom of it, whatever, and I extract the hard drive, and we're all set. I recover their stuff. In rare cases, if the hard drive is dying, I send it to the clone store. He's my current favorite. He's in Pennsylvania. He's a lot cheaper than the other ones. And he's been doing it forever. But, okay, hey Mark, I don't have a backup. I had a disaster. I go over there, I extract the hard drive, and I plug it into an adapter, and I read all the data. No problem. We saved your documents. We saved your photos. No problem. But in the case of Apple with their integrated hard drives, you've lost your data. It's one thing to overcharge people, but you've lost your data. The most important thing, whenever I teach my apprentices, the most important thing in the world is the client's data. If you break someone's computer on a job, all right, fine, you give them a couple $100, but the data is priceless. And Apple is taking that from you because they want you to worship their cloud service instead, and they want you to buy another computer. Even if you don't care about your data, the hard drive is a wear and tear part. Right? Just like your tires, right? So eventually the hard drive wears out. Oh yeah, put it in the garbage. So that's the integrated hard drive scandal. I'm the only guy talking about it. They're one of the few. There's also a guy named Louis Rossmann. He's the only guy in the world who can possibly recover your data if you have an Apple integrated hard drive and your computer died. So I had a guy about a year ago, and he's one of my favorite people, right? And he's a Mac guy, and he spilled coffee on his very expensive 17-inch Mac laptop. And he said, Mark, all right, come on over, routine job. And I said, nope, not routine. I couldn't replace the keyboard. And by the way, all his data was locked in the hard drive. On any other computer in the world, I can extract the hard drive and transplant it into another laptop and go on my way and go out to lunch. Not that one. I had to sit there for a couple of days copying his stuff out of that hard drive. At least it was still physically functional. I plugged in a keyboard. So I did a backup of all his stuff. And then he had to buy another machine, and he liked Apple, so he bought another one, same problem, integrated hard drive. And I copied all of his stuff to the new one. It took me a day or two. That is where they take something that used to be easy and they made it exponentially worse, just to make another penny. It's incredible. Nobody in this industry has common sense, morals, logic, or ethics. Where were we? All right, let's talk about, and later on we'll talk about another example where the industry is now locking people's hard drives. So let's talk about the spinning circle. You ever go to websites nowadays and it sits there and spins and spins and spins and spins and spins and spins? When I was in college, I had a buddy who had an Apple G4 tower. It was around 2002 or 3, and that thing was fast. And I was amazed. I went over to his dorm room, and he would go to websites, and they all came up in the blink of an eye. It was incredible. And we had an incredibly powerful internet connection at our tech school, and he had an incredibly powerful dual G4 tower, and it was incredible. Why do websites now spin and spin and spin and spin? Is it your fault?
No.
Thank you. They want you to think it's your fault. If you call any tech support dude in the world and say, I go to websites and it spins and spins, they're going to say, shame on you, you don't have enough internets. And you need to buy a better computer or a better internet connection. Or why don't you try one of our rental routers? I heard that helps. Not at all. On the most powerful computers with the best internet connections, with the best routers, you're going to see it spinning. Why? What if I called a company and I was looking for somebody, right? What's your name?
Mary.
Mary? So I said, hey, can I talk to Mary? And they said, hold on a minute, let me go get her. And then they wander around the building looking for her. And then they ask someone else, hey, have you seen Mary? I don't know, let me go get her. Oh, I got to have security clearance to do that. And they have to sign a bunch of forms. And they have to wander around another floor of another building. Maybe she's on the other building on the other side of campus. All right. Is that my fault? Is it my phone's fault? No. It's your company's fault. That's what's happening here. Websites are now created. Originally, websites were just text and backgrounds and a couple images, right? Maybe the image would take a while to appear if you had a slow dial-up connection or whatever. But eventually, newer websites are built on a technology, and I actually should call it out by name, but a lot of the newer technologies now with newer websites go through layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of digital bureaucracy and databases and permissions and whatever else, and then eventually spit out the result and give it to you a few minutes later. People are blaming themselves, and the industry loves to cater to that. They love accusing you, and they love selling you more stuff. Yeah, actually I'm gonna write that down here, couple more things.
How do you get around that?
So again, this is a societal issue. This is an industrial issue.
Okay.
It's just, yeah, you raise awareness.
I just found this at school.
Yeah, you raise awareness among your friends.
I think seconds and then I go.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm done.
You got
But
nothing to say
it's
to me.
funny, 'cause sometimes you go right back in,
It'll let you.
it'll let you in.
Because the answer was about to surface, so to speak. And again, I mean, make sure you're not infected with Norton. Like, do everything you can. Make sure you're not infected with Norton, and make sure you don't have fake Wi-Fi. Do the best you can.
Yeah.
But still, warn any designers you know in Silicon Valley that this needs to stop. This is a worldwide issue, and the only thing we can do is get out there and talk. So, let's talk about a few more things. We talked about deprecation a little bit, where Apple's getting rid of things or doing away with things, right? So let's talk about skeuomorphs. And there's a really cool quote from Queen Elizabeth here, where basically she says, how to take advantage of the new life without losing the best of the old, right? And she talks about how people feel lost and unable to decide what to hold on to and what to discard, right? So a lot of these guys are trying to discard anything from the past. What's a skeuomorph? The floppy disk icon, right? Like when I'm doing my word processing and I click save, it's a floppy disk, right? No one's actually using these things, but it symbolizes something. It is a familiar symbol, right? Actually, even the word phone call used to say, I will call on you, right? I will walk to your house and yell at your window and call on you. We use that word for phone call, right? There are plenty of examples of skeuomorphs. It is familiar symbols that we use in an unfamiliar new setting, right? A matter of fact, so the floppy disk save icon is funny because there was someone, I forget where it was, maybe it was my godchildren, and I had an actual floppy disk that I found in a drawer, and my godson said, hey, it's a real life save icon. As if it was a novelty, right? Or if you look on your smartphone and you go to do a video, right? It's a little image that looks like an early 20th century crank camera, right? Or when you make a phone call, it looks like a handset from a rotary phone, right? Or it might look like the phones from Lassie. Or the Notes app on your phone looks like yellow lined paper, right? So those are skeuomorphs. And actually the buttons, right? In Windows 3.1, the buttons looked like 3D buttons that you could click. Well, it turns out humans like and need the familiarity, the consistency, and the stability. They can't thrive in a world where everything changes constantly. In one shocking moment around 2012, Microsoft and Apple both decided to eliminate these skeuomorphs. With Windows 8 and iOS whatever, the comforting familiar images were dropped in favor of abstract symbols. Then a crackpot idea called flat design ensures we have no idea what's a pressable button and what's not. It's all about making you feel off kilter or what have you, disoriented. No more antiquated ways because too bad for you. They love deprecating or obsoleting or eliminating anything just because it's old, right? They think, well, we have to be responsible for it. We have to maintain it. So we have to do this because we're responsible for you. All right. Another hugely, hugely important thing I wanted to touch on today is the whole drive encryption scandal, okay? And again, this has to do with data loss. So back around, I want to say it was 2011 or so, one person had one laptop with all the social security numbers of all the veterans on it. And they brought it home from the office one day. And it just happened to be that that particular day, someone happened to break into their house. That's a little weird, right? It makes you think. So after that, the industry became paranoid because we should always react with knee-jerk reactions and paranoia, right? That always works. So imagine you lived in a steel bunker and only had one key. And if you lost that key, you could never, ever, 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 ever get into your home ever again. So that's what happened with the whole drive encryption scandal. This is what's going on. So the laptop was stolen, and all of a sudden all the social security numbers got out there. Or we don't even know what happened. It's that uncertainty, right? So the industry came up with the whole drive encryption scandal. This is where they lock the hard drive, so it's totally unreadable unless you provide the password. All right, that makes sense if you happen to take a laptop out of the office with every social security number on it. That makes sense if you're a spy in a war zone or something like that, right? That's fine. But now, by default, on a lot of computers, Microsoft and Apple are attacking us with it, attacking normal consumers with it. Yes, the same people who forget their password most of the time, all the time, every day. And it gets weirder. So not only did they put this on there by default, without your knowledge or consent, so if you forget your password, your computer is locked forever. Again, most people have no backups. Most people forget their password. Oh well, it's locked forever. And I've lost all my data, right? Nobody on this planet, not Microsoft, not me, not anybody, can ever get your data at that point. Even if I physically extract it or whatever, right? So it's similar to the example with Apple where they integrate the hard drives into the computer permanently. You lose your data. That's the theme here. So again, it makes sense in certain situations if you have a reason for it, if you knowingly know what's going on and willingly accept it. But other than that, it's creating chaos worldwide. Here's the problem. It's Microsoft we're talking about here. It's Apple we're talking about, right? Microsoft is the most incompetent organization in human history, in my professional opinion. And Apple is the most brutal organization in history, in my professional opinion. So what ends up happening? What is the chaos that results? That single boneheaded move prompted a flurry of IT lockdowns, right? And now the whole industry is locking people's machines. And they've never heard of the fact that there could be consequences, right? They always do knee-jerk reactions while never considering consequences. The other thing, what's actually happening is this. In the past couple months, I've seen two situations, I think, in the past couple months. Since it's Microsoft, it's not just you forgetting your password that's the problem. The lock cylinder, so to speak, destroys itself. So the locking mechanism, the software that locks your hard drive completely, destroys itself. So I had a lady who was part of a local chamber of commerce, something like that, a month or so ago. And she said, Mark, my computer got an update, and after that I can't get it anymore. It says, shame on you, type in your whole drive encryption password, who do you think you are? She tried all her passwords. She talked to her IT joker. She had a battle against Microsoft. She had 3 Microsoft accounts, because everyone in the world has 3 Microsoft accounts, and none of us know that we have any of them. And she logged into all of them, and I fought with them to get her to log in each of them. And supposedly Microsoft says, we'll give you the recovery key, and you can type in this 400-character long key and get all your stuff back. Nope, destroyed itself. The locking mechanism destroyed itself permanently. There was nothing we could do. We spent half a day on it. She just lost all her stuff. Luckily, she had a backup from 6 months ago, so she didn't lose everything. But still, think about most people on Earth who have no backup. And again, it's not even on you. They love blaming you, but in this case, it's Microsoft destroying the locking mechanism, okay? That makes sense? Another similar one here And I'm actually going to write this down. Hang on. Where are we going to, all right, a few more here. What are we, 5 more minutes?
It's almost 3.
All right. And I'll answer questions forever. So afterward, you certainly bring your questions. Let's see. Let's talk about the death grip scandal. So there is now on Apple and Samsung phones, as well as Apple computers and a few other things, right? A lot of the Google phones and whatever. This is what I call the death grip scandal. When you buy that product, it bullies you desperately to sign up for a Microsoft or a Samsung or an Apple or a Google account. When you do that, you then log into your new device with that account. You don't know this, but it marries your machine to that account. The pretense is that, well, if you lose your product or if it gets stolen, then it's not a big deal. They won't be able to get into it. Okay, fine, right? In the once in a billion years that happens, fine. But what's the side effect? Remember, 99% of people forget their passwords, and most people don't know that they need to, what's the word? I want to say it's abdicate, right? They need to sign out of their product before they can resell it or repurpose it or donate it or whatever. So what happens is people end up using a product and then they try to resell it and the next person can't use it. Even if you do a factory reset, it emerges from the reset and it says, welcome, please type in the password for the owner of this thing. Because there is only one owner, right? So the new person gets it and they are never allowed to use it ever again. It permanently disables that product, right? So again, the 3-4 times a year when someone's thing gets stolen somewhere, fine. But in the case where billions and billions of these phones, you can't resell it unless you sign out of that product. And most people forget their password, so they can't sign out of it. That's a beautiful way for Apple and Samsung and friends to sell more phones. It's a beautiful way to put more perfectly good products into the garbage. All of this stuff is effort expended to thwart you. I don't have too much time to get into the DRM scandal, but basically it's copy protection that's gone wrong. It's a failed anti-piracy measure that can only thwart you who are trying to do the right thing and to purchase that song or that video or whatever. If you were a pirate, you can pirate that media and get away with it, and there are no restrictions placed on the media if you pirate it. And so in the section here, I explain the illogic of it in my first book, but in the next book I really expand on it and talk about about the legacy of DRM. Of how it's caused nothing but injustice for people who are trying to buy online music, online movies, whatever. There's tons of restrictions placed on you, and if you pirate it, you get away with it. So that is the recurring theme of this industry, right? Any of these knee-jerk reactions to try to control us and keep us under their thumb can only result in injustice. And toward the end, I talk about what I call the futility of control, and I talk about that whole theme. Every time you try to control something, it exacerbates the situation, and chaos results. There is a very vast hope section. People always leave my class going, oh, no, I'm more scared than ever. And I say, don't worry, there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of concepts here. Really quick, there's something called the open source movement, right? So Microsoft, Apple, all these companies are closed source. So I'll explain it like this. What if I go over to your house and you make me dinner and I say, oh, that was really nice. What was in it? And you say, I'm not telling you. And then I go home and I get sick. That's closed source software. We have no idea what they're doing to us. In contrast to that is open source software. Let's say I go over to your house and I say, oh, that's a really nice chili recipe. And you say, yeah, here you go, here's the recipe. So I know what you put in it. That's open source. So open source software is software where we can see what they did. It's like sheet music or recipe, right? Or the blueprints. We can see how they built it. We can see what it's doing under the hood. We know if they're trying to do something malicious to us. So all these computers are now sold to us by malicious entities that try to slow us down. The manufacturers, the software providers, the independent bad guys, they are all trying to destroy our computers. We are under the impression that we need to throw these computers away after 2-3 years. That's not true. First of all, if it is truly dead, properly recycle it. Second of all, I make it a point to use a computer for 10 or 15 years. Anyone who tells you that a computer is too old and shame on you, it's obsolete after 3 years, doesn't know what they're doing, or they're trying to sell you something unnecessarily. Actually, computer speeds in the 90s, they used to double every year, but now we've hit a plateau. Around 2013 or so, computer speeds stopped increasing. So last week, I worked with 2 different people on the same day. They had 2013 computers, and I said, we're going to repair this. There is no difference between this and a brand new one as far as horsepower, as far as speed. So how do I do that? How do I take a computer with the treadmill scandal, right? You saw in last October where Microsoft said, put your computers in the garbage because you might get viruses. You got to buy a new one with Windows 11, right? That's a complete farce. It's totally fake and totally pointless, right? So how do you stop all this? The answer is with open source software, right? We talked about LibreOffice. That liberates people from having to rent Microsoft Office, right? And there's a product called Mint. I put Mint on old computers, right, for people. And this machine itself is more than 10 years old. It's a 2015 Apple. And Apple was awesome until 2019, right? So Apple does not want you using this computer anymore. If I had the Mac OS software on here, it would say, shame on you, too bad for you. You are not allowed to use the internet. Shame on you, you might get viruses. We don't want you using this. Go buy another one. So I liberated the machine with Mint. I can do that with most computers, right? Dells, Lenovo's, heaven forbid HP's, and so on. You purify it, you rip out the Microsoft or the Apple software, you put Mint on there, there's no learning curve, looks just like a Windows 7 machine, and you're virtually bulletproof from then on, and you can keep using that machine for many more years. There's nothing wrong with any of this hardware. Computers haven't gotten faster since 2013, like I said, and that's that. Any questions?
I have a question about, they're always trying to get you to stop using the passwords and use pass keys.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And before I forget, by the way, thecomputerexorcist.com for my podcast and my books and so on, and to have me come and talk to whatever groups you want. Great question on the passwords, and I talk about this in the password section. It's called the passkey scandal. And what if I said, hey, you know what? Let's make passwords so difficult for you that you just give up on life. And then, let us deal with it for you. So what if I said, hey, Mary, you know what? You got a lot of keys on your keyring. Why don't you just give them to me? And whenever you need to get into your house, I'll come over and do it. You can rely on me. Apple and Google and Microsoft want you to get involved in the passkey scandal where they take all your passwords. What are you going to do if you have a problem? You can't call them. You're roasted. It's a beautiful way to consolidate power and take power away from you. Again, all under the guise of fear.
I can't particularly see a difference. I know my passwords.
Good.
To know my passwords.
Good. Keep your passwords as simple as possible. As we talked about, complicated passwords can never protect you against anything. I've used the same 3 passwords since 1995. I've never had a problem. And I use the same password for everything.
What I do is I take the first 4 letters of whatever I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Then I have a set of symbols.
Mm-hmm.
Symbols and numbers, because some of them want symbols and some want numbers. That pattern of symbols and numbers is the same every time. So I take the first 4 letters of the company.
And just put the symbols, yeah.
So it's one password, really.
One of my passwords is, it has a capital and an exclamation and whatever. It complies with their pointless rules, but I just use that same one for everything. I don't change it at all because it's totally pointless.
Yeah, mine is different for everyone, but it's the same pattern.
Yeah. And we didn't even talk
Why I
about.
need a passkey.
Yeah, you definitely don't. It's a way to take advantage of people's laziness. It's, hey, you probably don't know any of your passwords anyway. Don't worry about it. I'll deal with it. And you know, if it was someone trustworthy, that's one thing. But it's Google.
I don't trust anybody.
No,
I'm from New England.
Yeah, love it.
Maybe about that.
And
Why do we need this?
I didn't even get into the two-factor scandal, right? But it's about paranoia, fear, and hassle. None of it can ever protect us, right? I could see maybe on my investment accounts, all right, fine. You know, I have $500 in there or whatever in my life savings. Okay, fine, right? That was a joke, but I could see maybe having the two-factor. But my investment company answers the phone when I call.
Right.
Hello, Mr. Arena, what can we do for you?
Yes.
Right?
And the other
But
thing-
every little stupid site needing the two-factor because their IT jokers had a knee-jerk reaction and thought they had to fall in line?
Yeah. No, you can lock your investment accounts for transmitting data out, or
Right.
transmitting data, money.
Right, I do everything with check. I just made, I sold my house and I put my money in my thing. I wrote them a check and mailed it to them.
That's right.
And I have a savings account at a totally separate bank, and I have to go there and flirt with the teller in order to take any money out.
Yeah.
I don't have any online websites or anything for that. And big deal, inconvenience for me, but how about actually being safe? And that's what I say toward the end of this book. One of the things I added recently to this is, hey, if we actually cared about security, we can do something about it. Like things like that. And hey, if we actually cared about the environment, we wouldn't design products to destroy themselves.
How good is the encryption on the HTTPS?
It's fine.
It's fine.
You know, if you really, again, if you really once in a while have something important, if you're at a shady motel and you really want to do, fine, do a VPN. But don't scare all of humanity into doing something out of fear.
Okay, but there is a decent encryption.
It's fine. Banks wouldn't allow you to do that unless they knew it was safe. Yeah.
So is it not enough to back up your computer, let's say, you know, almost all of them offer a backup.
An automated backup.
Where
Yeah.
it backs up to the cloud.
That's another thing I didn't even get into. So number one, any automated backups are usually fake. They back up all the irrelevant stuff and they don't care about the important stuff, right? So it's kind of like if you had a mover come over and they took all the walls and floors, but they left your prized possessions, right? They ignore the relevant stuff. So always do a real drag and drop backup. As far as a cloud backup service, so Carbonite is the worst of the worst in my professional opinion. The big name is always the worst, or almost always the worst. They're bloated and they don't care if you actually have a disaster and so on, in my experience. So I love iDrive.com. They're real human beings who actually care. They're a lot cheaper and so on for online backup. The problem is the cloud sucking scandal. When you buy a new computer now, when Microsoft and Apple beg you viciously to sign in with a Microsoft or Apple account, when you buy a new computer, don't ever do that. Because then they start attacking with the OneDrive scandal in the case of Microsoft and the iCloud Drive scandal in the case of Apple. You don't know this, but they will suck the contents out of your computer without your express knowledge or consent. Yeah. So a lot of what I do, again, it used to be easy. I come in and I fix a broken computer and I leave, but now it's okay, look, we're going to rip out the McAfee, rip out the WebRoot, rip out the Norton. All right, fine, now your computer's fast enough to actually use. Oh, wait a minute, you didn't know this, but all your data is not only copied with a backup, that's one thing, right? But your data has been stolen and removed from your machine by the OneDrive scandal or the iCloud Drive scandal. Again, worldwide scandal. Most computer guys aren't aware that this is happening. The ones who are aware of it just think, oh, whatever, it's just the way of the world. Do you think your data should be taken from you without your knowledge or consent and stored, in the case of OneDrive, in the least secure cloud ever?
That's why I've never used cloud. I don't use it on my computer, I don't use it on my phone.
Yeah.
And I consider certain types of things like cloud that they do across the board, like everybody uses them, right?
Too bad for you, everyone does
I
it.
want to send you a picture. You don't have the cloud, I can't believe it. It's like being on the playground and having the bullies tell you,
Yeah.
oh my God, I can't believe you eat peanut butter and jelly for lunch.
Yeah.
You know, it's ridiculous. But I don't trust it. I don't understand it enough to trust it, so I have never ever used it. And they do try to harass you. When I first got my new phone,
Oh, yeah.
which I got because I was forced to, I was like, disable this, and the guy's like, you're gonna need that. I said, no, I'm not. I don't need it now, I'm not gonna need it in the future. He couldn't believe the stuff I had him disabled.
Anything that says parentheses recommended,
Yeah.
you disable,
I was like, no,
because it's in their best interest. You're totally
and
right.
I have not lost any, like, oh my gosh, capability to function in the world.
You can still transmit
I have
pictures to
still
each
working,
other.
you know?
And you might not know this, but OneDrive, most of the time when I talk to someone, in the 7 or 8 cases when they were actually aware of the OneDrive scandal, my clients swore to me that they weren't involved in it, and then I go, oh, hey, look at that, they took all your data. So you might not even be aware.
The minute that OneDrive started doing anything, which it was in an update that I wasn't
Yep.
even aware of. Got put
During an
in,
update
I
attack,
immediately
they attack.
disabled it on the computer, and it was
So,
done, and I never saw another
They might have
OneDrive.
stolen copies of your stuff before you
Wasn't
disabled
anything there
it.
to
Good.
take. They were only there for probably less than a week.
Perfect.
Because it was new and I didn't put it on there.
Yeah, they could do a lot of damage in a week.
Yeah, but if you don't really have much to work with, I mean, it's
That's
not a
fine, yeah.
computer, it's not a business computer, it's just, little housewife computer, there's not much they're gonna get off of that.
Yeah, no, and as a neat freak, I can't stand that. When OneDrive comes in, they suck your data, and then during an update attack, it'll actually destroy the engine half the time, so now you can't even get to the data that's been stolen.
Yeah.
These are worldwide scandals here, and I can say this because, yeah, the guys who do know what they're doing, they are aware that this is being done without your express consent. This is a worldwide scandal, and the only way they're getting away with this is because people aren't aware. So, thecomputerexorcist.com for the podcast and the books, and thanks so much. And anytime you ever want me to speak to any group, let me know.
Thank you.
Very nice. Hope you enjoyed your stay in Easton. Did you get to any good restaurants?
Oh, I went to Mario's.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Thanks so much.